Welcome to the West County ACA Speaker Series, recorded in St. Louis, Missouri. We meet every Thursday as a literature discussion, and the first week of the month is our ACA Speaker Meeting. Speakers are asked to share their story and one tool they find most useful in their ACA recovery. If you'd like to contact us, email westcounty@acastl.org. We hope you enjoy. And so with that, I give you Julie.
Thank you. Hey, Julie. Hi, so my name is Julie. Welcome to both of you for sure for your first meeting. And I am a really grateful member of ACA. The way that I'm going to structure my talk through the brief description is just give you a little bit of what it was like, what happened, how I got here, and then share a tool that I use. So I won't bury the lead. The tool I'm going to share is just going to be grief work. Because it's one of the newest ones I've been experimenting with. And I'm really grateful. I have talking notes, and normally I don't have talking notes, but I prepared this talk and didn't get to really give it. I gave part of it, and then I had to wrap it up really quickly. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. Plus, I tend to talk a lot if I don't have a guide, so this is good. So what it was like, I was born to 19-year-old parents, and they were both really immature, self-centered, and dysfunctional. They were kids. They were 19 years old. The lure of my family was that my mom wanted to get pregnant so she could get away from her alcoholic father, and my dad wanted a good reason to stay out of Vietnam, and they felt that having a baby would solve both. We lived with my grandparents, and my mom got sick of that. It was my paternal grandparents, my dad's parents, and so when I was 2, my mom wanted to move away, and she thought it would be best to just move away and have another baby. So I left the care of my grandparents' home, and that was really my first loss in abandonment at 2 years old. My mom really blamed my grandma for her inability to bond with me, and and when she had this other baby, she wanted to be away from all of that, thinking it would improve her relationship with the other baby. And so I was, without my grandma, and I also spent a lot of time just watching my mom love on my brother, and so I really just spent a lot of time longing to go back to where I was loved. My parents divorced when I was 5, and I stayed with my mom, and it was just really bad. She was furious that my dad left her for another woman. We were very poor, and she had very few coping or living skills. And I just remember really often being really scared, always being alone, being really hungry, being really cold, and that was my second abandonment, because that was in 1975, and it was harder, I can respect it. It was hard for single women at that time because there was just no credit, there was there was nothing. And so I remember that really well. Both of my parents eventually remarried drug addicts and alcoholic. My parents were both sober, so it was baffling how, the dysfunction, because they married alcoholics and addicts. In our big red book, which is our basic literature, on page 96, it says that denial, which fosters a lack of clarity, is the glue that allows the disease of family dysfunction to thrive. Cloaked in denial, the disease is passed on to the next generation, and I love this, with amazing consistency. The basic language of denial is don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel. My mom was very physically and verbally abusive. She raged at me for any attempt I made to individualize or to take care of myself. My dad behaved like a helpless victim, so he always acted like he really wanted to take care of me, but he just couldn't. He just was powerless to make that happen, and he felt so sorry for my circumstances. And I just really longed for my grandparents and my dad, but I spent most of my time with my mom. As I got older, the physical abuse got way worse, and my mom just ceaselessly raged at me, humiliated me, and just called me a lot of really horrible names. She brought really dangerous, violent people into our life, and she normalized that. As the addiction and codependency grew at my dad's house, visits to his house became more dangerous and abusive too. I swore I would be nothing like my parents, but despite that, I started smoking pot in my sophomore year of high school, and that knocked out some of the anxiety, and it really, for a while, made me feel just like I could be a carefree kid. Everything was funny, things were new, I just felt like a little more at ease, and I didn't care so much about stuff, and I didn't feel as scared. I moved out of my house right after high school. I supported myself, and I really worked to try to get a degree, but my drinking and my pot smoking, it was really hard to do both. And, that stuff shifted from a solution to a problem, and I eventually got sober February 21st of 1995, and I still am. So, walking through the doors, so now I don't drink or smoke pot, and I learned to be independent and self-supporting, but I had very few living skills or coping skills. So in this first fellowship, I really did learn to suit up and show up. I learned how to stay clean and sober one day at a time, and my best thing is I learned how to create a to-do list and do it. And I was absolutely sure happiness, legitimacy, and freedom from the shame and blame of my childhood would come from doing what I was supposed to do as an adult, which was get a degree, get a good job, get married, buy a house, and start a family. So I was like, that's what I need to do to be happy. So fast forward, imagine my disappointment when I had accomplished all of those things. I was still sober, and I was miserable, and I felt completely empty. And I will say that through this entire experience, I had always had a sponsor. I went to multiple meetings a week. I wrote gratitude lists. I journaled. I worked the steps. I did service. I sponsored others. I read the literature. I went on retreats. I went on float trips. I went on workshops. And I will also add, that was vital. I would have died if I didn't do that. All of that was what we call, in my line of business, that was necessary but not sufficient. I had to do that, but it wasn't enough. Even though I had worked through the steps multiple times, I really never got a good answer when I asked, what do I do about the people who hurt me when I was still a child? What is my part? And they would always say, your part is that you're hanging on to it. Let it go. And so I tried that for a decade or so. And then, eventually I found another fellowship that supports families affected by alcoholism because, of course, I married a recovering alcoholic. And after I did that, I started to put myself into the equation. I started doing things that I wanted to do as a mother, and I started being able to detach from my kid's dad, who I was married to and lived with. He was sober and taking really good care of his mental health when we met, but he stopped doing that. And I was physically consumed by caring for, by this point, a set of newborn twins and their older sister, who was 3 years older. My husband hurt my twin son when he was only 9 months old, and I was told by the doctor that I would be responsible for any additional harm he did to my kids if I left them alone with him. I completed an inventory in this family of alcoholics fellowship with my sponsor, and the big aha after that exhaustive inventory was that I realized that the places that I had been hurt most as a child were the places where I had the most disproportionate reactions as an adult. So I could tell I was way out of whack based on these places that I had been really hurt, but there was no answer. There was no solution. It was like, good luck with that insight. And so I was like, okay, I get it, I also realized that I couldn't trust my husband, and I really no longer loved and respected him. That was another outcome of that inventory. His addiction and mental illness were just way too much, because I was also the breadwinner and slowly taking care of the 3 kids. So we divorced, and I was really afraid about that, obviously. And to my surprise, I had more money without his income. I had more energy without his help. And eventually I did find, love in a different relationship. I got a better job, and I started a role that was really aligned with my education, my experience, and my personal strengths. I moved into a better house on Heckamore, in a better school district, because that was, a lot of those things were big problems at the time, and I really thought my life was running in the right direction, and I was still thrilled. I truly thought, that it was this, the circumstance of trying to live with an active drug addict alcoholic with mental illness while you're raising twins and working full-time. I thought that was my problem. I mean, it was part of it, but it really wasn't all of it. I continued to work the steps in this other fellowship, and when I got to step 8, which is where we put ourselves, we make amends to people we had harmed, we make a list of people we had harmed. I put myself at the top of the list, and that was not allowed in my first fellowship. You don't put yourself anywhere on the list. At least that's what I heard. So I put myself in the top of the list, and I finally was like, I am going to spend time loving and taking care of myself. And, what I realized was that this co-parenting situation with this new relationship brought up a response in me that was extremely surprising and scary. What I noticed is that if my partner got angry at one of my kids, and I mean mildly angry, like side-eye angry, just like that kind of angry, my heart would just pound. I would be overcome with this really great desire to move out, to the point that I would seriously figure out all of my money. I'd start looking for a house, and I would spend days unable to even speak to my partner because I was that overwhelmed with the emotion and the anger. And I didn't even have a rational thought. I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to move. And it didn't go well, but I was really convinced that it was him. If he just, if he behaved better, I wouldn't feel this way. This person was not in any form of recovery, and we triggered each other's worst behavior. I spent my time planning to leave him while at the same time being terrified of abandonment. That's what I did in my spare time for fun. And I was convinced that my solution to everything was just to fix this relationship with my partner. I knew from my previous experience and 10 years of trying that I couldn't change my kid's father, but I thought very much I could fix my partner. He was smarter. And that my life would be better, it would be perfect if I could do that. I really did hit a bottom with that. And my sponsor at the time said, in recovery, you only ever get control over two things, your attitudes and your actions. And she said, but until you get help for your PTSD, you don't even get control over that. Like, you get nothing. And so PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's so common in ACA that it's actually part of our fourth step. So on page 12, it says PTSD events produce such a high state of threat or danger that experts believe it changes the body chemistry. Long after the threat has passed, the PTSD sufferer remains on high alert to ward off future events that could re-trigger the fear of a previous fearful event. So, what happened is my ACA bottom was, happened at the end of completing yet another checklist that I thought would produce happiness in my life that instead produced misery. Now I was in a better house, had a better job, I made more money, and I was working on another program, but it wasn't enough. I started trauma therapy to address my PTSD, and I really started to be able to see with help how bad it really was. And I also started ACA at this time. And I will tell you, there were 4 ACA meetings when I started this program, and I actually had the big red book from a fluke, but had the big red book, and I saw this woman come out of a basement at a church, and I chased her into the parking lot. She was at a book study that we eventually turned into a women's Saturday morning group, and it's like 50 strong now. So, yeah. So I really started to realize that the stuff I saw out of that inventory, that my current reactions were really out of proportion to the current stimulus. Like, something small would happen and my reaction would be like this big. I was reacting with all the hurt, grief, trauma, abuse, neglect, abandonment, and shame from my childhood. So my current life and my past wounds were enmeshed in real time. And so one of the first ahas I had is my boyfriend at the time left to go to this all-night gaming session with a friend, and I thought it was a date night, and I was absolutely leveled. Like, I was leveled by this abandonment. And there was a lot of other stuff going on, but it was just, just really upsetting at the time. And I was able to see, it was like my first aha in ACA, that like 10% of it was this, I was confused, I was disappointed, I was sad, I thought we were doing this, and and then said, he was like, oh, just don't wait up, and I was like, what? And so, but 90% of it was that grief, that unexpressed buried grief from when my dad left when I was 5. That's what I was really feeling, and that was the first time I was able to see that. But like all recovery, insights are a great start, but what I found out, unfortunately, there is no intellectual fix for buried grief. So, quickly, my journey in ACA, it really, really was huge for me to find ACA. And here's just a quick list of the things that have really saved my life in recovery. And then I'll go into the tool that I use for grief work, which I just started. So, understanding the definition of an adult child. So in our book, it says the term adult child means we respond to adult interactions with the fear and self-doubt learned as children. This undercurrent of hidden fear can sabotage our choices and relationships. We can appear outwardly confident while living with a constant question of our worth. It means that when we're confronted, we regress to a stage in childhood. And again, intellectually, I now know and respect that people are incapable of developing appropriately when they're in a survival mode. Your body will choose survival over learning to discern and things like that. Like, you're going to learn you're going to survive first. And so I see all these like rays of development that just stopped at different places. And my job in recovery is to like go back and figure out, how do I do these things? I missed these lessons, but they're not gone forever. They're just, I missed them the first time. And it's, the sad thing about it is that after a while, those survival tactics stop working. We don't have the developmental skills we were supposed to get. And ultimately, those skills block us from happiness, knowing ourselves, and knowing a connection with a higher power. Another thing that really helped me was just the step one, the outcome of step one is knowing that every single human being put in the situation that I grew up in would come out with the same traits. That's why we're all together with the same traits and we're in the same recovery. It's just a function of being human. It's a human response to abandonment, neglect, and abuse. So that was really cool. Converting that meeting, that act of service was several years long. I got to meet and bond with some amazing, amazing women, see so much courage. That was super helpful. Feeling my feelings. So those were some of the things early on that were just hugely impactful. So what it's like today, so in December I celebrated 9 years in ACA. I'm still sober, and I still attend the family fellowship of other people that loves people in the first fellowship. I only work the steps of ACA right now because I cannot. I want to focus on this. It took me 3.5 years to finish our fourth step, the ACA fourth step. It has 12 parts, and a lot of those parts will have an A, B, a C, and a D part too. And I just really wanted to take my time, and I wanted to watch my energy. I learned how to feel my energy. So if I push myself too fast, I start kicking up all this stuff, and I'm taking chances I'm not ready to endure. And if I don't do anything, I start to stagnate. So that's really, that's been really good. So I just take my time with that. And then, where I'm at right now is, it took me 3.5 years to finish my fourth step. I did do my fifth step. So what I did the traditional fifth step where you share. You break that don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. And I shared hours of fifth step. I don't know how many days it took, maybe a few. I had several notebooks. And we went through my fifth step, and then I tried to go on to my sixth step, and I could not. I intellectually could not. I was stuck. I couldn't discern the difference between a character defect and a laundry list trait. I mean, I can explain the picture of the tree, and I can tell you it. I can't internalize it. And so I went back, because that's best practice. You go back to the previous step. There was something, right? And I went back and I reread the directions to the fifth step, and there's actually 3 parts to it. One of them is the telling of the story. One of them is this other part I'm not recalling. I did that part. And then the other part is grief work. And that's where, and a grief work is a lifetime exercise. But the grief work, the way that I'm doing it in the tool is that I did the way I did the fourth step, which is I calmed my mind, I cleared some time, and I just thought about the question in front of me, and I let the answers just fly in a list. And I captured 18 things. And so I've been just exploring one of those things a week, and I sit down and I look at the thing, and I write down all the feelings that I felt. I have this list of feelings I get to choose from, like a sushi menu, and I just pick all the feelings that I felt, and I can have all of them if I want. And the feelings are organized by, these are feelings that you might feel when your needs are not being met. So it's a real guide to your needs through your feelings. So I figure out all the feelings I want, and then I spend about an hour just writing down every single thing I can remember about that event. And it's not like the structure in the fourth step where you're kind of going down the PTSD columns. I just really try to remember, what was I wearing, who was around, what was the weather like, what did I eat that day, every detail, the color, everything I can possibly remember. And I sit there with that, and I just get really curious with those nuances and go through that moment really slowly. Because I am extremely good at dissociating through this. I can, and one of the things that I took out of as a note in the workbook is that memory without a emotion is a form of dissociation. I always thought it was a sign of mastery. I can feel my stuff and just share it in different ways, and it's not. And so really to slow myself down and get rid of the words and just think about how that little person felt. And and I'm not going to go into the details, but the first one that I did was this very embarrassing moment I had when I was in first grade, and it was I was 6 then. It was just awful at home, and I truly thought that my first grade teacher was related to me. And so I asked her, like, if I was going to see her over the holidays, and she told me, like, honey, I'm not in your family. And I was like, it was awful, and then I was so embarrassed, and how could I, and I just felt so stupid, and so I was heartbroken. So I just really explored that 6-year-old who was so confused, and what did that child want, and what did they need at the time, and what would I give, and so after I do all of the sitting there for like 45 minutes to an hour, thinking about it, remembering stuff, and just trying to write those down, and if that helps, I will then ask that part of me, well, what did you need then? And I've never been short of answers, and so some of the needs that I'll list is like, I need to know that I matter. I need to be included. I need to be guided. I need to have what I need. I want to be prepared. I want to, things like that. Those are the needs that come out. And sometimes they're more specific, like I want this thing or that thing, and so then and I don't do this perfectly, but I really try to focus on giving myself those things through the week, because I do it like on Sunday morning, I'll do one of them. And again, I'm in no hurry. It's like, it's going to take what it takes. So, but that has really, really been, in the past 6 weeks, I've really felt a significant difference in just doing that. And it's just, I don't know how to describe it, except that, it is definitely getting to some of that root stuff. I feel like it's addressing some of those needs, and to get there, I will tell you, and then I'll wrap up with this. Like, to me, I had to be safe for myself because I was so absolutely, terrified to tell you what I needed because I couldn't endure your rejection. I really can't endure my own rejection. And so, you know what I mean? And so it's like, I had to get real good at not doing stuff like, that's stupid, you shouldn't feel that way. Oh my God, how are you going to keep your job like this? What the hell is wrong with you? You know what I mean? So I had to eradicate that through years before it was safe enough for that to come up and be like, I'm okay with this. And I realized I'm not going to die from these feelings. Like, I'm not going to be left alone to languish and roll around in the grass and the snot. And, I can have this moment, be there, and then go back to my regular life. So if I don't come back one day, that's where I went. But so far, I feel like Carol Ann, I feel like I'm going in the rope, so far I've come back every time. But that's my fear. I can't handle this. I'm going to die. If I see something that bad, I'll never return. So that's my tool. That's my story. Thank you for letting me share it. That's it.
Thanks for listening to our recording of the West County Speaker Series here in St. Louis, Missouri. For more information on meetings in the St. Louis area, visit www.acastl.org.